Check your net benefits. Stop scrolling and lock in for a minute, because a lot of people are misreading what's actually happening with Social Security, and that misunderstanding can cost serious money when you budget, pay bills, or make purchases based on rumors instead of the numbers that actually land in your account. Big announcements sound amazing on paper, but when you sit down with a calculator and your checkbook, the story can flip fast, and that's exactly the pattern playing out, with talk of increases, stimulus-style checks, and headline-friendly promises. Here's the twist. There is a 2.8% cost of living adjustment happening in January 2026 for nearly 71 million Americans on Social Security, SSI, and SSDI, and the average retirement benefit is described as going up by about $56 a month from 2015 to $271. Now watch this before you get carried away by that bump, because the part that doesn't get equal spotlight is what is being taken right back out. Your Medicare Part B premium is described as jumping to $22.90 per month, up from $185, which is framed as almost $18 more coming straight out of your check. So if you only hear $56 more and stop there, you miss the reality that Medicare can immediately claw back a big chunk of that increase before you ever get to spend a dime on groceries, utilities, or medicine. And then there's the nonstop chatter about a $2,000 stimulus check or a so-called tariff dividend. President Trump has been floating that idea, saying tariff revenue would fund it. But here's the harsh reality spelled out in the script. Those payments would cost between $280 billion and $607 billion, while tariff revenue is projected at only $158 billion for 2025 and $28 billion for 2026, meaning the math doesn't work as presented. Congress hasn't approved anything, and there is no detailed plan in place, so the promise remains political noise, not guaranteed cash you can rely on. With that framing clear, let's separate what is real from what is speculation and translate it into take-home money you can actually count on. On the real side, Social Security benefits are increasing by 2.8% in 2026, and the average retirement benefit is expected to rise by about $56 per month starting in January. For SSI, the maximum monthly payment is described as increasing to $994 for individuals and $1,291 for couples in 2026. For SSDI, the benefit is said to depend on work history, but the average SSDI payment is described as sitting around the mid-500s per month, and recipients see that same 2.8% bump. Here's where people feel the squeeze. And it's not because the COLA is fake, but because the deductions are real and immediate. Medicare Part B premiums are described as rising to $22.90 per month in 2026 from $185 in 2025, a jump of almost $18. Do the math the way your bank balance experiences it. A 56th average increase minus about $18 that gets taken back right away leaves only about $38 a month of actual extra spending room. And that is before you even account for other Medicare-related costs that many people also have. The Part B deductible is also described as increasing by $26 to $283 in 2026, so you pay more out of pocket before coverage even begins to help. And if you're among the roughly 8% of Medicare beneficiaries who earn above certain income thresholds, you can face even higher premiums through income-related monthly adjustment amounts, which can shrink your net gain further. That's why the system is described as giving with one hand and taking with the other, and why many people only understand the impact after they see the deposit amount rather than when they hear the announcement. Now let's tackle the $2,000 check questions head on, because people keep asking when the money arrives, and the script's answer is blunt. There is no $2,000 stimulus check approved right now, period. What's circulating is a proposal, an idea, and political talk, but it is not law, it is not funded, and Congress has not approved it. The concept being floated is a tariff dividend, where the government collects more money from tariffs on imported goods and then sends some of that money back to Americans as a dividend check. Trump has suggested payments of at least $2,000 per person for those making under a certain income level, while excluding high earners. And yes, that sounds great to anyone who could use extra cash, but the script stresses that the numbers don't add up, not even close. It points out that even if tariffs raise significant revenue, the cost of sending checks at that scale can dwarf what comes in. One set of figures in the script says tariff revenue is projected at only $158 billion for 2025 and $28 billion for 2026, while another part says new tariffs are projected to raise about $158 billion in total revenue in 2025 and another $207 billion in 2026. And either way, the script argues the gap remains enormous once you compare those totals to a program priced between $280 billion and $607 billion. Even at the low end, you're talking about needing more money than the tariffs bring in across an entire year. At the high end, you'd need roughly 3 years of tariff revenue to fund just one round of checks. And there's another layer many speeches glide past. Tariffs are not free money taken from foreign countries. When tariffs are imposed on goods coming into the United States, American companies that import those goods pay the tariff, and then they pass most of that added cost onto consumers through higher prices. The script cites analysis saying consumers faced an overall average effective tariff rate of about 17%, costing each household an estimated $1,500 on average in 2025. So the idea of receiving $2,000 back is framed not as a bonus from nowhere, but as something closer to getting a partial refund of money you already paid through higher prices at the store. The script also notes that even the White House acknowledges Congress holds the final switch. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett is described as acknowledging that any tariff dividend would ultimately be up to Congress as to whether checks are dispersed. And right now, Congress has not approved anything. There is also a bill introduced by Senator Josh Hawley that would send smaller payments, about $600 per adult plus money for dependent children. But the script says it hasn't passed and is sitting in committee. A White House official told reporters that Trump is committed to following through on the dividend, but the script emphasizes there is still no detailed plan, and without a detailed plan, there are no checks. Because of that vacuum, the script warns about scams spreading through social media, text messages, and ads claiming your $2,000 check is arriving in January or February, and urging you to click a link or provide banking information to claim it. The message is unambiguous. Those are scams, every single one. It states the IRS does not contact taxpayers through email, text messages, or social media, and it does not ask you to pay fees or provide banking information through those channels. If legitimate payments were being sent, the script argues you would hear it through official government announcements, and it would be widely reported by legitimate news outlets, and you would not have to do anything special to claim it. Payments would be sent based on your tax return information, like what happened during the pandemic. And that pandemic example matters because it shows what would have to occur for any tariff dividend to become real. Congress would need to pass legislation, vote on it, approve the spending, set eligibility rules, determine income thresholds, and allocate the money. It wouldn't happen overnight, and it wouldn't happen simply because a president promotes the idea. Then the script adds a legal question that could derail the entire funding premise. The Supreme Court is described as considering whether President Trump had the legal authority to impose many of these tariffs using emergency powers without congressional approval. If the court rules those tariffs were illegal, the script says it could affect about 75% of the new tariff revenue, which would destroy any realistic path to funding dividend checks. It also says the court could issue its decision any day now, and depending on the ruling, the government might have to refund the tariffs to the importers who paid them, making the dividend idea impossible. Now bring it back to what you can actually count on for your finances in 2026, because that's where planning either becomes stable or becomes a mess. The script says the Social Security COLA increase is real, and that 2.8% bump is happening. If you are on Social Security retirement benefits, the script says you saw that increase in your January payment. If you are on SSI, it says your increased payment began on December 31st, 2025, and that money is already in your account or on its way, which it presents as fact rather than speculation. But the crucial warning is to plan around your net increase, not the gross number that gets repeated in headlines. If you have Medicare Part B premiums deducted from your Social Security check, the script says your real increase is closer to about $38 a month than $56. And if you also have other deductions, like Medicare Advantage plans or Part D prescription drug coverage, those costs may rise too, shrinking your effective increase even further. It mentions the hold harmless provision that prevents Medicare Part B premium increases from reducing some recipients' monthly benefits below what they received the previous year, but it says that rule only shields certain beneficiaries, typically those with very small Social Security checks. Most people, it argues, are not protected by that rule, so they feel the full impact of the Part B premium increase. Here's the practical step the script pushes. Pull out your most recent Social Security statement. Look at what you actually received after all deductions in December 2025. Then calculate what your January 2026 payment should be with the 2.8% increase, and then subtract the new Medicare Part B premium of $22.90 instead of the old $185. That final figure is described as your real number, the amount you're truly working with, so you don't budget based on a fantasy check that might never exist. While focusing on Medicare costs, the script adds another hard reality check. This is the third straight year that Medicare Part B premiums have risen faster than the Social Security COLA. In 2026, it says the premium rises almost 10%, while Social Security rises only 2.8%. In 2025, it says the premium rose 5.8%, while COLA was only 2.5%. The script calls this a pattern, and not a good one, because it means more of your COLA gets eaten up by healthcare, and purchasing power can decline over time even though the dollar amount technically goes up. That's why it keeps insisting you look at real deposits and real bills, not slogans about raises or claims that someone is looking out for you, because the bank statement can tell a very different story. For SSDI recipients, the script explains the basics so people don't confuse programs or misunderstand why benefits differ. It says SSDI requires that you worked long enough to earn sufficient work credits, typically 40 credits over a 10-year period, and that your disability must meet the SSA's strict definition and be expected to last at least 12 months. It also stresses that SSDI payments are calculated from your average indexed monthly earnings from your working years, not the severity of your disability. So two people with the same medical condition can receive very different SSDI amounts because their earning histories were different. For SSI, the script emphasizes this is a separate needs-based program designed for people with very limited income and resources. It warns that if you have earnings from a job or other income sources, that amount may be deducted from the maximum SSI monthly benefit and can reduce what you receive. It also says SSI has strict asset limits and income limits, and going over those limits can cause you to lose benefits entirely, which is why it urges reporting changes in your financial situation to Social Security immediately. So, where does all of this leave you? The script's bottom line is direct. The 2026 COLA increase is real, but it is being significantly offset by Medicare premium increases. There is no approved stimulus check or tariff dividend coming to you right now, and anyone telling you otherwise is either misinformed or trying to scam you. It says the proposal exists, but it has not been passed by Congress. The math does not work with the stated costs and revenue projections, and the legal questions could kill the idea completely. Your plan for 2026 should be built on reality, not hope. Take your actual Social Security increase, subtract your actual Medicare costs, and budget based on that net figure. If a stimulus check somehow gets approved later, the script frames that as a bonus, but it warns you not to count on money that doesn't exist, not to delay paying bills, and not to postpone necessary purchases because you expect a big check to arrive. Live within the means you actually have right now and protect yourself from fraud. If someone contacts you claiming you must verify information, pay a processing fee, or click a link to get a stimulus check, that is fraud. So delete it, block it, and report it. It repeats that legitimate government payments go out automatically based on tax records, and you don't have to chase them down. And even if this isn't the fun news people want to hear, the script argues that truth is always better than false hope, because you cannot make good financial decisions based on bad information. With misinformation everywhere, the goal is to cut through the noise and stick to what's concrete. The COLA, the Medicare changes, the cost and revenue figures, the congressional reality, and the legal uncertainty, so you can plan with facts that actually hold up when your bills are due and your deposit arrives. To make this even clearer, think of the COLA as a percentage bump applied to your benefit, while the Medicare deduction is a fixed dollar amount that can rise sharply. So even when your benefit inches upward, the healthcare deduction can swallow a large share of the gain and leave you wondering why your lifestyle doesn't feel any easier. The script's repeated theme is that you should never confuse an announced increase with usable cash, because the usable cash is the net deposit after every automatic subtraction that happens before the money reaches you. That is why it keeps pointing you back to your own statement and your own deposit history, because no headline can tell you what happens after your particular deductions are applied. And when people argue that a check must be coming because someone mentioned it publicly, the script keeps returning to the same reality test. Is it approved by Congress? Is it funded? And is there a detailed plan that explains eligibility, income limits, and distribution mechanics? Without those pieces, it remains talk, and talk does not pay rent, prescription costs, or utilities. On the tariff dividend claim, the script highlights the gap between what sounds plausible and what adds up on paper. A projected revenue figure can look huge until you divide it across an entire eligible population, and that's why the cost estimate balloons into the $280 billion to $607 billion range, which the script says can overwhelm the tariff totals that are cited, including the $158 billion figure tied to 2025 and the smaller $28 billion figure tied to 2026, as well as the separate projection of another $207 billion in 2026. Because those competing numbers get tossed around in different places, the script's point is that you shouldn't treat any single talking point as a guarantee of funding. You should evaluate whether any version actually covers the full expense of checks. It also reinforces that tariffs are felt at the checkout line, not just in government ledgers, because businesses don't absorb all those added costs forever. They adjust prices, and households absorb the impact through higher everyday spending, which is why the analysis about an overall average effective tariff rate of about 17% and an estimated $1,500 per household cost in 2025 is used to ground the conversation in what consumers experience. In that framing, a dividend can be portrayed as returning money, but the script insists that if higher prices already took a bite, then the return is not free wealth. It is closer to getting back part of what was already extracted through inflation-like price pressure. Then, on the legal side, the script urges people to recognize that even projected revenue is not guaranteed revenue if the underlying authority is in dispute, because the Supreme Court review described in the script could reduce or remove a large chunk of collections if the tariffs are ruled improperly imposed, and the possibility of refunds to importers would reverse the cash flow entirely. That is why the script frames the legal question as a potential deal breaker, not a footnote. Back to Medicare and Social Security, the script's warning about the third straight year of premiums rising faster than COLA is included to show that the squeeze is not a one-off surprise. It is a pattern where the healthcare side grows faster than the income adjustment side, and the numbers it cites, nearly 10% premium growth against 2.8% COLA in 2026, and 5.8% premium growth against 2.5% COLA in 2025, are presented as the proof. That pattern is why the script wants you to build your budget around what remains after the Medicare subtraction, not around the gross percentage increase. It also explains why two people can have the same headline bump, but feel very different outcomes, depending on whether they pay Part B, whether they have additional plan premiums deducted, and whether income-based adjustments apply. That's also why the hold harmless provision is mentioned with caution. It exists, but the script says it only shields certain beneficiaries, usually those with very small checks. So assuming you are protected can lead to a nasty surprise when you see the larger deduction. And when the script tells you to compare December 2025 to January 2026, it is not pushing a complicated spreadsheet. It is pushing a simple before and after check that reveals your true change in spendable income once you subtract the new Part B premium of $22.90 instead of $185s. On the benefits program side, the script repeats its educational reminders because misinformation often comes from people mixing up Social Security retirement, SSDI, and SSI as if they are the same thing. It stresses that SSDI hinges on work credits, typically 40 credits across a 10-year period, and an SSA-defined disability expected to last at least 12 months, and that the payment is tied to average indexed monthly earnings, not to how severe a diagnosis sounds. For SSI, it reinforces that the program is needs-based, so outside income can reduce the benefit, and going above strict limits can end benefits entirely, which is why timely reporting matters. Finally, the scam warning is repeated with urgency because scammers thrive on confusion. If someone pushes you to click a link, share banking details, or pay a processing fee, the script says that is a classic fraud pattern, especially when it is tied to claims about a check arriving in January or February. The practical message is to ignore the hype, protect your information, and anchor your decisions in what is already implemented and already visible on your statement. That is how you stay steady when political noise gets loud. Focus on confirmed COLA changes, confirmed Medicare deductions, and confirmed program rules, and treat everything else as unverified until Congress acts and a real, detailed plan exists.